Good morning. Denise Dryden here on Bainbridge Island. I came back down to the area where the labyrinth is because this is the beginning of Blakely Harbor, and just the restorative feeling of being here is fabulous. And if I could turn the camera around, you'd see this wonderful little rope swing bench that is my favorite place to come when I have something to meditate on, something to sort of put together, something to integrate. So, over these last few weeks, we've been building strategies. We've been building strategies for what to do when the world is really chaotic. You know, what's going on with ourselves, what's going on with our family, what's going on with work, let's take it big, what's going on with our nation, what's going on in the world. And for those of you who know me, I coach parents. I'm not a parent coach. I coach parents, which means that while you're doing life and you have these little sponges, right, that are scanning, recording, and playing back everything you model to them, how do you run your life in a way that is worth modeling? How do you know that your kids are watching you and they're gonna repeat what you do? They're gonna look up to you for leadership. And today I thought that the best topic I could come up with to sort of tie all these pieces together is going rogue, right? Going rogue. So what comes up for you when you think about that topic? I've got, the historian and the communicator in me is going to define it for you, but what comes up? Living off the grid, stepping away from the norms, even being a rebel, right? So defined, it's to cease to follow orders, to act on one's own, against expectations or instructions, and to pursue one's own interests. I like that. The term has other meanings too. If you go into Urban Dictionary, they talk about going rogue as stepping outside the sexual norms. It's a laughable sort of term that they use a lot with young adults. Sarah Palin wrote a book called Going Rogue. And in it, she said something really interesting, that Trump has been able to tear the veil off the idea of the system. I got that right off of Google, which I thought that's really interesting. Tear the veil off of the system. But going rogue actually came from the 1920s, and it's a circus term. It had to deal with pachyderms and elephants, and it was, of course, moved immediately into the political realm. But what it really meant was that you have these really carefully trained pachyderms that can perform in the circus, right? And when they get something going in their head and they break loose, they go rogue, it means that you can't bring them back and they will not reform. They're actually like dead to them. It won't work anymore. That to me is kind of exciting. It's like, whoa, man, wait a minute. When the elephant breaks that little chain around their ankle and realizes that they have a whole lot of world out there that they can go explore, that's called going rogue. So that's why we're talking about that today. Yes. Once someone goes rogue, once we decidedly we choose to separate from the norms, what we notice is that the world changes. Our perception of the world and the world around us changes. It shifts, it expands, it absorbs. We have had so many generations going rogue in different ways of introducing, whether it's the 20s with politics and the flappers and the idea of complete independence, the 60s of the peace-love movement, the single focus of the dot-com growth. These are things I'm going to drop everything else and go after it. These are ways that we have brought about significant changes in our world. And so going rogue is a very valuable trait. So let's bring this into you in real life and relationships. We've been playing with some really key subjects since January. We've talked about subjugation, which is the powering over. What happens when we are in situations where we're being powered over, right? Or empowerment, which is how do we provide an environment that nurtures and empowers someone to step out of subjugation. We've talked about creating space and time for exploration, for integration, for that distance and space to find out what really wants to happen here. And we've been owning that we're building skills and that we're doing it as a newbie, as a novice. And we've talked about owning that and being a badass novice, right? So you can go back to January and see what we've been talking about. And it sort of all comes together in this concept of self-advocacy, which is, who am I? How am I going to embody this life I have? And how am I going to take action when the norms, the expectations, the institutions on me don't work anymore? So going rogue is a term that I would like you to embrace, which is, it's both an attitude and it's a behavior. It's a way of thinking and it's a way of acting in the world. So when we look at what's working, what's working in our lives and what is not, then we start, and we can create time and space to go, I'm getting that tap on the shoulder that something's not working and we need to make a change. We can decidedly choose to do something different. We can create opportunities and sort of step outside of those norms. Try some new things that you sort of ruffle the edges and see how it works. We create opportunities for ourselves when we do that. We discover ways to get comfortable with being different, with being unusual, with being creative, with being out there, right? There are two women I know, myself and a girlfriend of mine in Whitefish. Both of us sort of packed everything up and took off. She's going down the Oregon coast and the California coast, and I'm up here on Bainbridge Island getting used to the ocean. So it's really cool. So let's bring this into a parenting example, because that's what I do, right? So let's say you have a child who hates going to school, and mornings are a battle. Evenings are just like a lot of temper tantrums and a lot of acting out. This could be a small child, 5. This could be all the way up to a 17-and-a-half-year-old who's should be almost finished with high school, right? And something's not working. There's a disconnect. There's a rub. So how do we stay in discovery, right? And keep looking in curiosity and going, something's not working here. There's something about my kiddo that's not working. And start to think outside the box. Explore some complex ideas, like what happens if your kiddo's highly sensitive or empathic. And what I'm going to tell you is that when you see things like anxiety that fluctuates, goes up or down, gets big at times and then reduces. When we have a scattering of an IQ, 25, 30 points bigger than the clusters. When we have attention issues, sometimes ADHD. When there's low processing. When there's executive functioning. When the teachers are like, I can't put my finger on it, but something's not working. What we have is a kiddo who gets overwhelmed. Right? We get overwhelmed, and there's information outside the realms of traditional school that is important for you to access. So when we notice that, I've got a kid who resists going to school, who's acting out, who's overwhelmed, his or her behavior is coming into the house, it's stirring things up, and it takes some time to calm down, and there's some disconnect in sequencing, in getting homework in, and all of that, then it means that we have to turn around, right, and go, what are my expectations? What are my belief systems? What are the limitations that I've put on this entire environment based on what I know? Like, I've always wanted my kid to get into this private school. Or my world is built around this school, which is going to get my kid to a really good high school, which is going to get them into college, which is going to build my world into success. So if you want your kid to have a good education and they're in a school that causes them grief, we have some disconnect there, and we have some of our own expectations that are showing up in our kiddo. So when we do our work on these intentions and these attachments, and we look at where we're flexible and where we're inflexible, then we get the courage, again, a behavior, an attitude, to let go and act on behalf of our child. So, let go of your own stuckness, which is, oh man, this private Catholic school has been so hard to get into, and if they would just do their homework, let go of that. That's yours. That's not theirs. You explore options. You explore ideas. You look at getting creative, like maybe we do mornings at home and afternoon activities at school. Maybe I homeschool. Maybe I look at a softer, more creative learning environment and find out what gets my kid into themselves, what calms them down, what opens up their creativity and their magical skills, because usually they have really high IQs, right? You get brave, you get courageous, and you feel your way through it like a novice, which is, I have no idea how to do this, but I'm going to do this. So to bring this home as a personal example, my husband and I had our children, and we were living in Texas. We were living in a tiny town outside of Dallas, and the education system was something really different than each of us knew, and it was rubbing us the wrong way, and it was rubbing our kids the wrong way. And there was this point where we had our office desks sort of, side by side, and I said, I think we should start a school, because our kids learn differently. And I remember he leaned back and he said, we could start a school. Do you want to start a school in Texas? Is this where you want to put your mark down? And I was like, no, let's go. And so we went and we looked at mountain towns and places where there were creative environments, and we ended up moving to Bend, Oregon. We went totally rogue. We sold our executive home. We packed everything up into 2 U-Hauls. We rented a house in Bend, Oregon next to the school that we wanted to go to. And then we co-created a alternative K-8 magnet school with other teachers and parents. So that's how we didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. My husband went to work full time, and I was, trying to make the school happen with 3 kids in it, right? So when we allow ourselves to let loose of these expectations and these norms and float out there where it's scary, it's different, it's unusual, it's fun, we, can look at things like, maybe my kiddo needs a different kind of teacher, a different kind of environment. Maybe I have to let go of my pushing. Maybe all of our life has to get a little gentler. And maybe, oh man, I have to take a look at what I'm doing. Am I happy? Am I working at a job that I like? Is it going the direction I want to go? Is there another direction I want to go? And sometimes it requires, when we go rogue, to make a change in location, a change in schools, a change in work, a change in life, and own it. Get to know it. Like, oh, so now we're living in a town of 19,000 up in the mountains where there's a lot of snow, and we have a lot to learn. This is what I love about having that courage to go rogue. So I'm going to end this with this beautiful concept that when you make the changes within yourself that you want to see in the world changes. So it starts and it always is about us. It's about how we self-advocate. It's about how we take time and space and learn what's important. It's about how we understand what's working or not working, overpowering or empowering. And so this is what I do. I have lots of tools and skills to break this down and guide you. If you're curious, give me a call. We'll have a cup of tea. You can find me on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com. Have a fabulous Sunday and enjoy.